Hey everybody, it's Pete from MyJewelryBunch.com. Today what we're going to talk about is a way that you can destroy your own watch and do it on purpose. So let's get started. Don't forget to check out my website, www.myjewelrybunch.com. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. Okay, so let's talk about this dreaded battery talk. I've talked about this before, and we're going to get into it again today. So one of the problems that I've been having over the last month and a half is I've been getting lots of watches every week from both jewelers and customers telling me that their watches aren't working. And one of the issues they're having is when I open them up, somebody's put the wrong battery in. And that can be a big problem for any watch today, any quartz watch, obviously, if you're putting a new battery in it. You have to be aware of the different size batteries, the different types of batteries, and whether or not the battery, just because it looks like it's the same circumference, is actually going to fit in your watch and allow it to work. Okay, so let's take a quick gander at this Gucci watch that came in from another store that they asked me to check out. They were saying that the watch, for some reason, this watch does not change the date. And I wanted to take a look at what was going on inside. So besides the watch being extremely dirty and needing at least to get cleaned out, this is what I found inside the watch. So let's take a look at this movement. This is I think it's a 956112 movement from ETA. And what we have inside of it is this battery. It is, I'm going to focus in here, a 377 or 376, but most commonly called a 377. So this is a 1.5 volt battery, and it should run this watch for anywhere between 12 to about 20 months. Now, the watch is running, and when I manually set the date, it works and doesn't work sometimes. It's got some issues there. So by looking at this battery, the first thing I can tell is it's the wrong battery. And the reason I can tell it's the wrong battery, if we look at the case and we put the case back on the watch, the back cover, when I push down on that, I can tell that the battery is going to be kind of squished into the watch movement. Now, most people would think, well, that's great because then it's going to hold the battery in place. Well, actually, that's not the case here. You can see the level of the back cover, and when we kind of move the watch over here, I'm going to get it in focus, you can see that that button battery, or that 377, is seriously protruding out from the surface of the watch. I like to kind of go by, in this case, this Gucci watch has a nylon gasket, so we use the nylon gasket as kind of a reference. The battery should be well below that. So here, when we take a look at this watch on this ETA movement, what we're seeing is that the battery, the positive side of the battery should almost be level with the surface of the back side of the watch. And you can see it's not. It's just too thick for this particular model. So again, we've got to look at, what's the possible problem that the watch isn't working, and here I'm looking at the case, and I'm looking at the level of the case, the indentation of the seal where the nylon gasket would go, and I'm trying to figure out from here, is the battery the right size? Is the battery pushing down on the movement? Is it causing issues? So again, we get into the situation where this battery being too thick is causing a problem. It's actually putting pressure on the inside of the watch. It's actually being pushed into the watch mechanics, and I'll show you here in a second, by the back cover when we squeeze the back cover back in place. So again, this is a problem I typically see with ETA movements, and I'm not sure why. People confuse the battery numbers, but here you can see the inside of the watch with the battery removed, and if you notice, I'm going to kind of get this in focus, there's a small little gear located just below where the battery would sit, and that gear is actually used partially to set the date or the day of the month. So you can tell that little gear, I'm just kind of moving it here with my oil stick, and I'm just trying to get a feel for what's going on here. Now, under this little plastic piece is nothing. 90% of the time. That's just a space where the battery button would contact, and it's just to keep the battery from shorting out the positive and negative side of the battery, because obviously you don't want to do that. This gear becomes the issue, though. With that 377 battery, it's too thick. You put the cover on, it pushes into that gear, and the watch, unfortunately, will not change. Now, because it's pushing on that gear and causing that gear not to turn, the watch is trying to change the date, because it's trying to get more power out of the battery. It's actually stopping the watch occasionally, so the watch may not be running, constantly, and it's actually draining the battery quicker. So that's why you sometimes will hear somebody say, well, my watch battery that I got 2 months ago is not working anymore. It's because there's something inside the watch, inside a quartz watch, that's causing the battery to have more draw on it. Sometimes it's a circuit board, but 9 times out of 10 it's dirt. So I kind of know what battery this watch should have, but we're going to measure up this 377, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to turn on my millimeter gauge here, my micrometer, and I'm going to measure out this battery, and you can see it's 2.46 millimeters thick. I don't think you should ever short out a watch battery, but I'm just doing this for reference sake so that you can see. Now here's the correct size battery. This is a 364. It has exactly the same circumference as a 377, but when we measure the thickness, you can see it's 2.05 millimeters thick. A significantly different size battery with the same voltage, and it'll still run the watch for up to 2 years depending on the condition of the watch. So when we insert that battery into the watch, you see it fits perfectly just like the other battery did, with the exception of it no longer protrudes from the surface or the backside of the watch case. So that being said, when we put the cover back on, there's no pressure on the movement itself, and you can see it's almost flush with the backside of the watch movement. It's kind of what we look for when we see an ETA movement. 99% of ETA quartz movements, the batteries are always flush or just about flush to the surface of the back cover of the watch. So I'm not blaming the jeweler who brought this to me for repair, because it's probably not his fault. I'm guessing this. I see this happen mostly and I always ask customers, where did you get the battery installed? They'll always tell me they either did it themselves, they brought it to Walmart, they went to the FF place in the mall, and that FF place in the mall usually, they're fixed jewelry. They don't really care too much about watches for the most case. So you just got to be careful where you take your watch. A lot of these kiosks in the mall, they're run by young kids. Young kids don't necessarily have the experience to know what size battery it is, and maybe they're going to look at a battery and say, well, geez, it's this wide, so I'll just find one and I'll stick it in there until it fits. And that's typically the wrong thing to do. So keep that in mind. So one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because I've been seeing a lot of this over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and it's been driving me a little crazy, and I just thought I should kind of pass this on before. I've done other videos on this subject too before. But by putting the wrong battery in, especially a battery that's too thick, in this case, we could be doing enough damage to this movement, and the retail repair price of this could be, anywhere between $175 to $250, depending on where you get it fixed. So that's something you want to keep in mind. You go to a CVS, you buy a $3.99 battery, you throw it in your watch, and it's the wrong one. You squeeze down that back cover, and actually you could be doing a lot more damage. So guys, please be careful if you're doing your own watches and don't have enough experience. And if you ever want to look it up, you can always check the movement number and look that up as a reference online, because online you could always type in whatever the model number of the watch is and what battery it needs, and you'll get that answer right away. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. That helps my channel grow, and I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great weekend.